This is the Tabernacle Podcast with Adam Ray, our guest, Josh Boulis, and me, John Vermilia. What is up, Adam Ray?
Well, I have no idea what's up, actually. I was going to say something very profound, and as is often the case, as soon as I try to, there's nothing there.
Is this similar to a moment where you step up to preach, and I don't know if you've ever done it, I haven't thought about the first words out of my mouth?
Yes, definitely. Those are always the most panicked words, because you're like, all right, I'm setting the tone right now. How am I going to introduce this? And the rest of the sermon is clear, concise in my mind, but trying to
I didn't think about the takeoff.
Yeah.
I didn't think about the takeoff.
So, which it often ends up being just a lot of words really fast because they're not well thought through. So
it happens to all of us. I'm preaching probably more than 23 years, but 23 years of organized preaching. Mm-hmm. Like I've played organized baseball one summer, but 23 years of organized preaching at the same place. And now it is one of my favorite things. You'll see students goofing off like we're stacking chairs. It just happened this last week after the annual meeting, after the service. A teenage kid about my son's age, he pops up there and he starts going through the standard intro. And it was, hey, good morning, Tabernacle. Hi, I'm one of the pastors here, da-da-da. And he was just doing his whole cokes and jokes. And it's like, bro, when you've done it for so long, mm-hmm. you try to get a little something different, you know? But are you chilly, though? Because you're rocking that flannel.
Well, yes, last evening, we were sitting around the fire, and it had like that chill in the air.
Yeah.
And so
it is cold.
I assumed this morning when I woke up that it would be a similar temperature, but it's got like that muggy, mm-hmm. And I'm not 100% confident that the t-shirt under this is like, camera worthy. So I was like, we're just going to keep the flannel rocking.
Okay. So, Matthew, if you see him sweating profusely on camera, would you let me know and we'll cut it short? That is so, I love your honesty. Yeah. That's a good man. Josh Boulis, our guest. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you.
Any fear and trepidation being down here or none at all?
It's all good. You
look like a dude that doesn't fear much.
No.
If you had a top fear, what would it be? Because I'm looking right here saying, okay, out of all the dudes in this room, in any sort of scrap, it won't go well for me. And I include Matthew in this because he has multiple belts of various colors in Asian arts.
Yeah.
But you look like you could bend me in half, and I'm pretty sure you can break me. So is there anything you do fear, sir?
The name starts with an L and rhymes with Laura. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Well, water.
Water.
Yeah. This is true, actually.
Yep, I've talked about it. It's one of those things that shocks a lot of people, but like, I'm just not a big water guy. Or less what's in the water. Like, I always make the joke, like, I'll take on a brown bear with a pocket knife, but, you put me in the water, those things just, they swim faster, and I'm just outnumbered.
And you don't know where they're coming from.
Right.
Okay. But, you do know how to swim.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, you know how to swim, so it isn't that. It's like, have you ever been to the ocean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know we have to have a serious podcast here, but I grew up around the ocean, and so the ocean is like if I had a choice between dying on a Yukon or Arctic expedition mm-hmm. or Lost at Sea, I'm taking Lost at Sea all day long. Nope, not afraid. Let's go. Let's just, whatever.
Yep.
But how many Michigan dudes that I idolize, man, this is like you guys are the dudes from The Revenant, 100%. I could see you carving out the guts of a horse just to stay warm.
Oh yeah.
Now I know you're a horseman too.
Yeah,
Let's be careful.
Yep.
But a little sand shark and you are out.
Yeah.
The Michigan guys when they go to saltwater, I'm not getting in. There's sharks in there. I'm like, I know.
Yep.
But
one of my main clients, he lives in Naples, Florida, and we went out deep sea fishing with him a couple of times, and
that's the best.
We were like 45 miles out in the Gulf, and I was telling him this, because they're out there all the time, and I was like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of this, but
really?
I'm putting my trust in you and in the Lord, and we'll be
God.
Good to go. And so far, 2 trips, we're all set.
I was on a fishing thing like that. I don't know if it was the same thing, but a friend, I won't go into the whole story, but mm-hmm. he took us 20 miles, had to have been, east of the easternmost Bahama Islands. We're headed straight to the big eastern shelf, like the drop-off.
Yep.
And all of us, I asked the question, hey, so how deep is that out here? Oh, it's easily a mile deep. And I'm like, oh, dang.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just get this feeling of being like, there's that moment of what my British friends called squeaky bum time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Squeaky just for a second. And then for me, all of a sudden, it's like I feel like I'm held up by the sea.
Mm-hmm.
That God, I mean, I'm not trying to get you over your fear. I'm just saying for me, because I've had the same experience a mile out on my own on a kayak on a flat, calm sea where it's just me in a life jacket, no phone, nothing. I can see the shore, but I'm a mile out
Mm-hmm.
and it's flat, calm, and there's critters out here, and you might see one flat by.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a moment of fear, and then for me, there's a moment of unbelievable tranquility. It's like, God, either you got me or you don't.
Right.
It's just kind of, I mean, you feel that same way in the wilderness?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
My dad would often say that we can drown in 20 feet of water just as quick as we can drown in 1,000. It's just the 1,000 makes it harder for them to find you.
Right.
That's wisdom. Josh, we want to know a little bit about you. This is the first time you're on the podcast. Martin Rizzi, if I back up just a second, has done a fantastic job. We love Martin. And with the loss of a certain Oklahoma dude, has brought a little more organization to the podcast. But there's some things that don't change, which is on this date that we have selected and organized for all of us to be here. The title is Hunting Stories Part 2. We're going to talk about some hunting stories. Now, if you're not a hunter, don't just check out yet, because we got 2 preachers and a dude that's been in ministry his whole life. Wait, are you ordained minister?
Mm-mm.
Not yet.
Not yet. Something we'll have to remedy. But we're going to tie it back to Jesus. And so we know that some of you just wait with bated breath for the podcast. Some of you just put it on as background music while you're working, and that's great. But we will tie it back around. We've got a little bit of a direction. We're going to talk about bears. But before we do, since it's your first time, sir, can you just tell us a little about you, your family, how you got to the Tab? What'd you do before? What are you doing now? So it's not just like, is this a Clayton Porter lookalike?
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's Josh Boulis?
So, I Central Michigan, born and raised. Kind of moved around the state. Lived in Ohio once. Don't hate me, all you Michigan fans
I don't
around
hate you.
here.
My father's from Ohio.
But yeah, my wife and I, Laura, we have 3 kids: Addie, Weston, and Colton.
Excellent names. Yeah.
So, we. Prior to getting involved with Tab, we were in full-time camp ministry for a while. Anywhere from, right around 7-8 years in different capacities. And then while we were serving at one of the camps down there, we had a couple friends that we had worked at camp with that they're Buckley natives. One married into a family here, and he invited me to Fight Club and came up and started going to Fight Club, and then started attending church, and just really latched onto the kind of building the church on the backs of men mentality, and just the way I was raised and stuff like that. Like, it was one of those, like, the mom was the spiritual leader in the house. I mean, my dad was a great guy, great Christian, still is. But having that as a priority here and being able to just kind of latch onto that, and for me to get plugged in and then discipled and just poured into, helped me be a better dad, I wasn't a dad when we first started coming, but better husband. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Now, how did you, let's back up. What is camping ministry?
So we worked at a couple different camps. It's Christian camping. It's like a youth camp, camping conference center. So we did youth camps throughout the summer. And then in the off season, or fall, winter, spring, we ran different men's retreats, women's retreats, and then also did like youth retreats on the weekends as well.
Gotcha.
In the winter.
Was camping ministry something that was big in your life prior to getting into camp ministry? Like when you were a young man, did you remember going to camp and all that stuff?
Yeah. So I started going to camp when I was going into 3rd grade, and I went every single year. Didn't miss a summer, all through high school. And it's one of those things that I always had that pull, like, oh, I'm going to work on staff and all that. And then, when I got to the age where I could, sports were starting to take over, and I was heavily involved in sports in high school, and just, the excuses that young teens, make. Oh, I can't go to that because I gotta be in the weight room. I gotta be at, all the different trainings and stuff like that. And then I ended up just working, jobs and never actually going to those things. So then I missed out, but then it was cool how the Lord just kind of worked around that. And, Lord willing, we went and had offers and just got plugged in, started volunteering. And then, we just started in the full-time ministry just after, it was the day after our first wedding anniversary.
Really?
So
for 1 year, it's like you hadn't really felt called to ministry before that?
Yeah, we were feeling the pull for pretty much the whole time we were engaged. And then right as we first got married, we'd work our 40-hour work weeks. And then, Friday afternoon, evening, we'd drive up to the camp, serve another 40 hours or whatever over the weekend. Then that would energize us. Then we go home, and we just kept doing that over and over again. And eventually it was like, okay, maybe we should just, do
It'd
that
be simpler
full time.
just to stay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. When did you get saved?
Oh,
when did you receive Christ? It depends on if you're Calvinist or Arminian. We don't care.
it was
when did it happen, man?
Probably like middle school age.
Yeah.
I feel like that's when I took the first, for me, step in that direction. I was raised in the Christian home. We went to church, regularly. We're heavily involved. But for me, it was actually it was called Acquire the Fire. It was like an altar call.
Oh, yeah.
Where I got down and, started making my way. And there were so many kids that were, doing that. And then I just ended up sitting in the aisle somewhere, and my cousin was with me. And then some random lady that I never knew her name. I can still picture her face, but she sat there and prayed with us. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to me that he can remember her face.
Yep.
Right? Because then it's not just like, oh, I'm, like a deer in the headlights here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it was a vivid memory for you, which
Mm-hmm.
for me shows the genuine nature of the moment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not against altar calls.
Right.
I've given a lot of them.
Yep.
There's a lot of different places and ways that someone can receive Christ. But
Yeah.
So you're in camping ministry. I promise I wouldn't do this, but I kind of want to. Who asked who out? Did you ask? Laura's a force of nature.
Mm-hmm.
She's awesome. Okay.
She is.
So I am wondering whose idea was it that maybe we should go out on a date? Was that yours or
Mm-hmm.
was that hers?
Yeah, I had asked.
Okay.
So yeah, so my
And
brother.
that is no disparagement on her
Right.
at
Yep.
all.
Yep. So yeah, how that all came out, my brother was dating a girl that he had met when he was working at Camp Living Waters and that girl went to the same church as Laura. So I was, it was a good excuse to get away. And there's more that led up to that, but I would always go and stay at our friend's house that was dating my brother. They actually broke up the day that I started going up there, but they always let me stay there and was able to go to church there, pretty regularly. I was driving an hour, so, that's just what I do.
It's just part of it.
Yep. So I would drive the hour up there, stay with them, and then hang out with Laura. And then, I had ended up, they had like a dinner theater that their church put on every Christmas. And I ended up, asking her out that.
A date to the church dinner?
Well, she was in the dinner theater.
Gotcha.
So I had came up, watched it, and then just before I had left, before their last performance, we had talked, and I was like, hey, we should, go out. And so that's kind of
cool.
the short
She
version.
accepted the first offer.
Right.
Wow. That's great.
So-
Good job.
So if you were to put years that you've been involved in some capacity or the other, because I know your involvement started when you were at Camp Living Waters, just south. It's just south of us, but it's about an hour.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And you were commuting from there for a while, and then you moved further east and south. Correct.
After there, we actually moved. That's when we moved to Ohio. We're down there for.
Oh.
Yep.
There was an Ohio, and
Yep.
then
And then back to just south of Cadillac.
gotcha.
At another camp there.
Yeah, and
So-
you've been involved at the Cadillac campus currently,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And so my first recollection of the name Josh, who is this Josh character, right, is some guys on our staff had said, man, you really need to meet this guy Josh. And you'll never, I don't know if you know this, but you'll never believe it. The guy drives an hour to be a part of Fight Club.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, wow, you drive a lot or pass some, I mean, I'm sure there's other church possibilities, but then when I heard about it, it's like, no, you're in the middle of the national forest out there, right?
Middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And so you're driving an hour to go anywhere, right?
Yep.
Which still, it was like, wow. And then I meet you and your wife, I think in the third space for the first time. And we maybe had a conversation. But my first images of you, like in action, okay? Well, first of all, he wears the same footwear that you prefer, right?
Praise the Lord.
I'm like, yeah, this is a cowboy, right? But it wasn't just boots. It was obvious. I don't remember what it was, but being a missionary kid and traveling a lot, there's little tells that there's dudes who wear boots that are outdoorsmen, and there's dudes that wear boots that spend time on horseback. And you weren't wearing spurs in church,
right?
But I had a feeling that this guy spent time on horseback, and I may have said, like, this is just the way my stupid brain works. And I may have said something about horses in jest, and then you were like, oh, yeah, we'll put you on a horse. And I was like, oh, he is a cowboy. I nailed it, right? And then we did a men's retreat with a bunch of, who were the other churches involved?
There was a lot of different churches that were involved.
Brethren.
Brethren
churches.
United Brethren.
Yeah, United Brethren. Okay. No disparagement on the United Brethren. But I just got to tell Adam Ray, and if the podcast for family. So the Tabernacle's going down to be a part of this retreat, this men's retreat. You locked me in to be the speaker. Almost all the other churches are United Brethren. And they're like, don't worry, bring your firearms. There's going to be a range day. There's going to be horses. We're going to do whatever the weather permits. It's like March, right?
March or April,
March
typically.
or April. It was, there was snow, cold, mud. I mean, it wasn't that bad, whatever. And it's rustic and it's cool. And he gets up to give the announcements to like, hey, dudes, these are the camp rules. And he's doing he's got spurs on. He did have spurs then. And I'm like, oh, this is epic, right? But it was day 2. The range was open, which was the Wild West, by the way. That was the Wild West.
It was not planned that way.
It was not planned that way. I thought, full disclosure, I thought United Brethren were pacifists. Those bros are armed to the teeth.
Oh, yeah.
This was pre-law, right? There were bump stocks. There were M1. I shot my first M1 rifle there. Guys had every sort of automatic, semi-automatic. There was tannerite. The United Brethren scared the fire out of me. But I just embraced it.
A lot of those churches are all like legit in the middle of cornfields, scattered all over the central part of Michigan. So
good old boys, man. We had a blast. I was like, these United Brethren aren't pacifist at all. I don't know where I got pacifist from. Maybe it was the brethren. I mean, you think the word brethren, right? But the relationship has been huge. One other question before we start talking about bears. When did you first get into the outdoors? Or has it always been a part of your family, your DNA?
On my mom's side, it's always been kind of a part, but it was just, basically opening day, gun season, that kind of thing. But I started going out with my brother and my grandpa. When I got into hunting, it was still, you had to be 12 and 14 in order to get into hunting. So I had to go out and sit in my own blind, but I couldn't carry a gun. And then got into it a little bit later on, more into the bow side of things.
Got it. So you're an avid hunter.
Yep.
Primarily whitetail, or do you do it all?
Primarily whitetail.
Yeah. Have you ever shot turkeys?
I have.
I've shot turkeys, but not with Adam Ray.
Dude. Wow. That was a low blow.
That's not a low blow.
Right
I had so much. That's the most fun I've had not getting a turkey
Yep.
is hunting turkeys with Adam Ray. It was the neighbors messed us up, right?
They did. That morning might have been the most gobbles we ever heard, though.
Oh, you were carrying on a conversation. I was like, I didn't know that our new executive pastor spoke turkey.
Yeah.
I mean, legit. How are you today? Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yeah.
He says he's doing fine. I mean, it was just ongoing, but I'm not coming over there. I've got enough hens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the final details of that story. So
you don't sound pretty.
Yeah.
Right.
Because we're sitting locked and loaded and ready to go. So primarily whitetail.
Yep.
Any interaction with bears? Because we're supposed to talk about bears at some point.
Yeah, I tried bear hunting with my brother up in the UP. Just drew a tag on a whim and had some guys that I worked with that they had an old cabin up there, so we made a go of it, but never saw a bear or anything like that.
Never saw a bear.
So yeah.
I have seen bears. I've never hunted bears. You, sir, have hunted bears.
I have.
And you have slayed the bear.
The bear has died.
Someone asked me, who is Adam Ray? And I said, he might be the prototype of David, King David in the Bible. Yeah. The one who says, I have killed the lion and the bear. Have you killed a lion?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Good time.
They're just a touch out of my price range so far.
Yeah.
But it's still on the list.
Have you ever killed a cat?
Bobcat?
No, kitty cat.
Like
feral stray cat.
I will not answer that question.
I've killed the cat. I have not killed the bear. So
Yeah.
cat's a lion. It's a mini lion.
Yeah.
But I don't know what this has to do with anything, as we often do in this podcast. But my favorite bear story is 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 23 and 25. We're currently in our sermon series, 1 Kings. We're dealing with Elijah. His apprentice, Elisha, who takes over, receives the anointing. He goes on. I won't give you the full context of 2 Kings chapter 2, but he's ministering. He's just healed somebody. It's pretty cool. But then there's these random 3 verses in the Bible, which I'm sure when we get there in a couple of years, we'll find something interesting to preach about. But speaking about this prophet Elijah, it says, he went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys, at least that's what it says in the ESV. I think some translations say youths. I prefer to think of them as youths, like, I don't know, middle school, 14 and 15-year-old boys, where they're old enough to cause ruckus and have a potty mouth, and that you still just want to whoop them, you know? But these youths, they came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, you bald head. Go up, you bald head." And he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys, mauled them, it says in another translation. And from there he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. I have threatened more students with that little story. Hey, be careful.
Yep.
It's funny now,
Yep.
but you read in the Bible what happened when a bunch of students jeered a preacher, right? They get mauled by 2 she-bears. Any idea what that story's about, Adam Ray?
I have no idea.
Nothing out of your vast theological background?
Yeah, I have never preached that passage.
Me neither.
Never researched that passage. I've always thought it was a weird story. It's just an awkward, like, 2 she-bears. So were they bears with cubs? Because they're more violent typically. I have no idea.
Do she-bears hang out? That's a legit question.
Yeah, they would.
Because like 2...
Unless they have, if one of them has cubs, it would be less likely because
Got
they'd be protecting them, kind of keeping them away from all the other bears. But
So my limited experience with more experienced hunters, I see whitetail does hang. In fact, I hit one last night, just pow. A small, like a yearling, I guess they're called. Sorry about that, but it was his fault. Don't cross the road, man. When a preacher is barreling into Buckley, bam. But I know that the doe hang out, and then there's a thing called bachelor groups.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know if bears tend to do that. So there's bears in the Bible. David killed bears. I don't know how many bears there still are in the Middle East. You've hunted without success. You, sir, went on a ministry excursion to Alaska.
Alaska.
Do you have a Yukon River knife?
I do.
Yeah. Me too, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yukon River knife. If you don't have a Yukon River knife, Matthew, do you have a Yukon River knife? No, sorry, he makes his own knife out of rocks. No, that's a Smith right there. So I'm just playing. But you were there actually checking out the ministry arm of Yukon River Knives.
Yeah.
And preaching, and as you often do, which is not a bad thing, while I'm in Alaska, maybe
I'll shoot something.
Bear. Yeah.
It
Let's
only
kill
makes
a bear.
sense.
Yeah.
I mean, you're there.
The trek to get up there is worth the time to just invest a little more time.
100%.
Yeah.
Was it the first time you hunted bear?
No.
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 Okay. Yeah.
So the very first bear hunt that I ever went on was with a TV show called All Bear TV. And this was more of we were in Manitoba, Canada, Thompson, Manitoba, northern part of Manitoba. And it was more of a scenario where a lot of baiting was involved. And I'm not opposed to baiting bears. Please don't hear that. But the very first time that a bear walked into the bait on that hunt was the very first time that I'd ever seen a bear in my life. So we're
You've
down.
never seen a bear in Michigan?
No, we're downstaters. So you're Lansing area. That whole time that I lived there, any trek or place that I'd been to, just had never seen a black bear of any kind. And so there's that surreal nature of a bear walking in, and in the that region, kind of like northern Michigan has it a little bit, but you get all that moss in with like the black spruce, and it's tight and tangled, and you can't really see anything as you're walking in. And then there's just a little carved out opening in the woods where they've been baiting the bears. And often because they've gotten used to the bait being brought in, or the sound of the vehicle bringing the bait in, we would be climbing the tree and getting into a tree stand or into a blind as the guide is baiting. And by the time he's pulling out, there's already bears on the bait.
They're like, wow.
Yeah, they're honed into it.
Yep.
But because of the moss and because of the pads on their feet, you never hear a bear coming. And so it's just all of a sudden like, oh, well, hello, you're under my tree.
Wait, are these black bears?
Black bears.
These are black bears.
Yep.
All right. Yeah.
The only
they're
time,
big.
They're big
black bears.
When we were in Kodiak hunting a couple years ago, that was the first time I'd seen a grizzly, and total different game. Not sure where I would stand on all that yet. But that hunt was successful. We ended up, there was a bear that was larger than average bear that was coming into the site, but it was.
Wait, I'm sorry. You just said larger than average bear.
Yeah,
that's like a saying. I don't know. It just. I didn't sleep a lot last night because I would say you, sir, are a larger than average bear.
Yeah.
Both of you, sirs.
So as you're watching these bears come in, of course, the nature of a TV show like that is to showcase the upper echelon of what this outfitter can offer you. And so this was us coming to, we stayed with the outfitter at his home, and then we drove quite a few miles to a riverbank, put all of our gear into boats, went 9 miles down the river to the cabin that's just sitting on the side of this riverbank. And it's incredibly remote, yet like just perfect in its remoteness. So eagles constantly working over the river edge. You could stand on the end of the dock and literally jig for walleyes. We brought, in Canada, you can't use live minnows. And so it's always frozen minnows. And so you have this package of like 24 frozen minnows, and you're trying to make them stretch, as far as you can. But then, when the minnows are gone, you're like, I'll just drop a jig head down there and see how hungry these fish are. And they hit the jig head just as easily. So saugeye and walleye and pike and all those things. Anyway.
So this is on the way to bear. You're just hammering the fish.
Yeah. So the bear hunt wouldn't start typically till 3 or so in the afternoon, and you'd hunt because it stays light so late. Right. You'd hunt until 11:30 at night, and so that whole morning is just. I would go down to the end of this peninsula where we were staying and do my Bible reading and just time down there, and the eagles are literally like working over your head the whole time and just landing over there, and you're just in awe. I can't remember. There was a specific passage that I was hyper focused on that week, and but there was something to do with nature and birds of prey or something like that. And the very first time that I'm reading the verse was when the eagles kind of like start working over me, and I'm like, oh, in that space.
Church.
Yeah. So, but I crave that environment of just wild, where, you're not, some of the trips that we've been on, you're completely foraging for everything. If you didn't bring your food, you have to kill it or catch it in order to survive that week. This was, although very remote, no electricity, no running water, there was a camp cook, and like we'd come in the evening at 11:30 and have moose Wellington or something, So it was like a balanced.
You're smiling a different kind of smile. I've seen you smile.
Yeah. So it's a that was the environment of this place, and so you're looking though to find not just to shoot an average bear.
Yeah.
Where everybody could be like, yeah, but I could shoot that in Ontario, or I could shoot that in northern Michigan. but a bear, like, this is why I would travel to Manitoba. And this bear would skirt the bait site like he knew we were there. So the outfitter said, I've got an idea. Let's set up on the logging road that we're using to come in here, because that's the way that the bear would approach. And he will be circling the bait. I'm going to go in and bait like normal. I'm going to do all the normal stuff, but we're going to just put a little sticks and branches, ground blind out here on the road. And you just sit there on the road. And then when he walks in, you can shoot him.
Okay, wait a second. So before this, were you in tree stands?
We were in tree stands prior, yes.
But bears can climb trees.
For sure.
But you're still thinking, all right, I can at least pop. I mean, if he gets mad. Because
Yeah.
I've heard stories where they're coming,
Yeah.
right? They're like, all right, I don't like whoever's up there, and we're going to go check it out.
Yep.
But now you're talking, did you say sticks
Yeah.
and branches?
He was
And
cutting
they're going
like
to be
these,
on the ground.
Yeah, he was cutting like these little aspen branches and just sticking them in the ground like for some cover.
Yeah.
And this
It's
whole
like a death wish.
well, the whole time though,
I don't want to be in the tree with the bear. I don't want to be on the ground behind sticks
Yep.
and branches.
The whole time I'm looking at the guy that's the cameraman, and he's a buddy, but has done this many times. And it's just like being in a boat where you're cruising across the ocean, and it's 5-6 footers, and they're just climbing, and you're always watching the captain
Yeah.
to see, is his jaw clenched or his
Yep.
knuckles white, or is he just
smiling?
chill and
Yeah,
smiling
yeah, yeah.
and tipping back his coffee on the way across. And so I'm always paying attention to the more seasoned person in that space. And he was just like, that's great. Well, when, and this is going to sound terrible to the non-bear hunting
Oh, they've already
community.
checked it off.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they've already clicked it off. It's
Okay.
fine. It's fine.
But he
This is the tap.
he fried bacon with a little, what is that, like a steno, the little heating
Oh,
device.
yeah.
And he fries bacon right on the side of the trail, and then dumps the bacon grease on the ground and the bacon, and then he leaves and goes and finishes the bait and then leaves. So I'm like, okay, that bacon is 9 feet from me. So when the bear comes in, it is literally 10 or 11 feet away when I shoot this bear. And it was great. It was a totally
And he
fun
had
night.
no idea. Even though he's lured by the smell of the bacon or the bacon grease, he doesn't smell you.
No, he did not.
Or he's
It's
so
funny though,
focused on the
bears
bacon.
do this really weird thing. Like they just kind of are super slow rolling, like they roll their shoulders and kind of roll their neck back and forth when they know something's off. But he would just kind of do this like glance in my direction, but it was like, but bacon.
Trumps all.
So yeah. So there was but after we shoot, the outfitter tells us not to go look for the bear until he comes, and so we radio him, and he's a few miles up the trail just working on other stuff, and we radio him, and by the time he gets to us, it's very dark, and he's carrying a shotgun and like a 12 gauge. He said he had slugs in it or whatever. But we're walking in to retrieve my bear, and you can hear other bears woofing at you, like woof, their little challenge thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up deciding that recovering that bear in the morning was a wiser idea. So that's what we did on that hunt. And then the second time I went up there, we had just a crazy experience with hunting a spot that there were so many bears that it was literally like, they called it the zoo was the name of that blind or the name of that stand. And it was a weird platform stand that had no sides to it. And so the whole time you're sitting there just trying to freeze because, you have no cover whatsoever. And this sow that was giant jelly roll sow comes up and puts her paw on the platform by my foot. And so I'm like looking back like, is this time for panic yet? Or, but it was like she knew we were there and was just going to check and see if we're, what's going on, and then it maneuvers on. But she goes over and feeds for forever, and then a bunch of bears are in there, and we're trying to communicate, is that a sow? Is that a boar? We don't want to shoot the sows, obviously, with the potential of cubs and all those things. And so by the time this whole thing's over, you're like, we just saw 20-some bears tonight, and no shots were fired. And then I ended up shooting a bear a couple nights later. It's the one hanging in my office. And
Big bear.
then I turned into the cameraman on that hunt. So we're filming out of a double ladder stand that's 20 feet tall. And each edge of the ladder stand is fastened to a large black spruce or some kind of pine tree.
Mm-hmm.
But the normal traditional, like the ladder stand is leaning against a tree.
Right.
Just didn't work that way out there. So we're standing there, and I'm on the one side, he's on the other, the hunter, and he's does his interview, and we're sponsored by some kind of face paint company, and so I'm filming him putting face paint on him.
Putting on his hunting makeup.
Yes, I was literally, per our joke about using middle names in our authorship earlier. That'd be one of those moments where you're like, he needs his middle name shared. But we we filmed this thing. Well, then some cubs show up on the bait site, and this guy that I'm hunting with is like a force of nature, human being. 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260, like a giant former college athlete, not afraid of anything, sitting there on the side of the 2-track the year before with that bear, no big deal, his pulse never quickened, never started breathing hard or anything. And with these cubs, he just gets real squirrely and antsy. And he's like, if those cubs even start coming to this tree, I'm going to scare them off. And I was like, he's like, because the sow is going to, if they come up our tree and get above us, and he just goes in this whole thing, and he's like in a fit of concern. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is really crazy. Well, a bear back in the woods woofs, and those stinking cubs right up our tree. And so now he's in full panic mode, and he's saying, "Shoo, bear, shoo, shoo, bear," and he's pushing at him with his bow and arrow, trying to get him to go back down the tree. And the whole panic of this, I don't hit the record button because it was hysterical. Because it's a cub that's maybe 20 pounds or something. It's not something that's going to hurt us. He's worried about the sow, not about the cub, but he wants the cubs below our stand. And I, since then I have seen some more severe scenarios created, but in that moment I have zero fear factor, and so it's all just comedy to me.
So it's comedy because you're not aware of the danger.
Correct.
I'm assuming, and for the non-hunter that's listening about bears, it's the mama bear. Mm-hmm. That's trouble.
Every time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you even look at grizzlies or black bears or any form of bear, it's always the sow with cubs that's the danger.
That's the danger.
Yeah.
Now, on both of these hunts, were they archery hunts?
Mm-hmm.
So your first one, when you were in the ground blind in Manitoba,
mm-hmm.
that was with a bow.
Correct.
And, okay, that's just amped up that story tremendously.
Mm.
I'm assuming you have sidearms as well.
Not at all.
No sidearms?
Nope.
Because I've heard about the dudes that they go after the elk out in the West. They always have a sidearm because
the way that
dangerous.
The way that hunt, and they may have changed the regulations, but the way that hunt is set up is was an archery hunt. And so no sidearms were allowed or firearms.
Oh, you did say your guide had a shotgun.
Yep.
But maybe that was for self-defense.
That was after the kill.
That was after the kill.
Oh,
yeah.
after the kill.
Yep.
Oh, dang. So now that amps up because, I imagine the first time you saw a bear, it's majestic. There's beauty. There's a little fear factor.
Oh, yeah.
Because it will not go well for somebody. And if all you have is a bow,
mm-hmm.
I mean, how fast can you get off a second shot with a bow?
Not super fast. It's an interesting thing there too, because the typical nature of a whitetail-minded guy, which was my total experience at that point, is I want to be hidden. I want to be in a tree high enough that they can't see me or they're not naturally looking up at me. And I want to be in a blind that's so brushed in that they don't even pay attention to me.
Right.
And with these bear hunts, because of the size of the trees, that 20-foot ladder stand where the cubs came up, that was the first time that I'd ever been above 10 feet. Because there's not a tree or a way to even build that. If you build a platform, which would be insane to try to build back in the middle of nowhere. But if you build a platform, you get up 5-8 feet, you're already into the tops of those black spruces, and now just limiting your vision. So that was the more surreal part of it, is there's a bear that's on the bait and he's 20 yards max away, and the bottom of my feet are 6 or 7 feet off the ground. And so you're just kind of, and I'm not in cover either, we're just in a tree stand. And so there's this I forgot to tell this part. The very first time that I ever filmed on one of these hunts, we are all, like both of us, the guy that's hunting and myself filming, have never bear hunted. And so the guide takes us, tells us, walk down this lane, you'll see the bait site, climb up there. I'm going to come in after you guys are set, and I'll bait and leave. But we won't have any interaction or talking because we don't want our voices. And so we're like, yeah, sure. We get down there, we climb the tree, everything's great. Right before dark, a bear comes in. And we couldn't assess the size of the bear. Like, is this a big enough bear to shoot? And so no shots are fired. But then we have to climb down and walk back to where he met us out on the trail. And it was in that moment that for the very first time we processed, like, this is not safe, what we're doing.
No.
And
you need a sidearm.
Yeah.
Or two.
Yeah.
You need to be the Lone Ranger, one on each hip.
Yep.
But
and some spurs.
our pace was quickened. Would be a great way to say that as we
I'm just
up.
sitting there thinking about was it the first one or the second? No, it was the second one where that bear put its paw. Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a bear paw. On the base of your stand. I think unless I had someone really, really seasoned, like that bear's dead, or at least I might have shot my own foot off trying to shoot, or something.
Yep.
So this is the comedic bear story. So in moving to Buckley, I within a couple of years saw a bear, and I have relatives who've lived here their whole life, never moved away, never saw one. I feel like I see them all the time now. I've seen them cross the road. I saw one coming back from Gulf. I've seen them coming back from whitetail hunting where they're just out in a soybean field just running. Mm-hmm. And, hey, I'm going to stop and take a video, right? Well, I'm new to archery hunting, and just at the camp that I took you to, my friend, my hunting mentor, he set up in a different deer stand. We're hunting whitetail with bows, and so it's an archery season. I should have said that. So he's across the field, and then I'm sitting overlooking corn. And so it's pretty thick beneath me, to your point about them being silent. And I'm watching, and there are two deer in the corn, but they never present a shot. Like, I know they're there. I can't count points, but I see the corn moving, and then one's a doe, and then another one just stays hidden. And I was just kind of watching that the whole night. Gets dark. My friend comes over, and he's a gruff, Vietnam vet, and I love him like a father, right? And when I see him coming, I start coming down the stand. Like, that's my cue. We're done for the night. And he's like, why didn't you shoot them deer? And I was like, Bob, I never had a shot. I said, I couldn't count points. Well, one was an 8-point and, one was a 10. I go, one was a doe. And he's all like up, like, why are you upset with me? And I'm like, I promise you told me not to shoot blind. I would have been shooting blind. And I watched the whole time. And he goes, no, you were on your phone. And I said I was on my phone. There's times I've been on my phone, I've done sermon prep in a deer stand, but I'm like, man, I wasn't on. And he was I was like, why was he in that mood? He was like, did something bad happen? And then, he wasn't mean, but he was just grumpy with me,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find out till years later, because my memory is when I came down, I said, oh, what's that? And it was some sort of scat, and he goes, oh, it's nothing. And now I know it wasn't deer scat. I didn't find out till later. Years later, we're sitting at his cabin. The reason he was upset is there was a big old black bear that came to the bottom of my tree stand while I was watching those deer. I don't know if he didn't want to freak me out or freak out my wife, because she has a little bit more anxiety. And he felt this pressure that on his watch, the preacher was going to get mauled or killed, because all I had was, and there was this big old black bear that basically took a dump right at the bottom of my ladder. Never heard him, never saw him, never nothing, because I was focused on what's moving in the corn, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's when, my blood was kind of like, oh, these are for real. But he was upset because of fear.
Yeah.
And he was like, I'm too far away to help this guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. At that point, I was Elmer Fudd. Now I'm just Elmer. I've dropped the Fudd part, because I have killed the deer and the turkey and some other things. But If I'd have seen a paw, I think I might have lost my mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Very fatherly response from him. You
Yeah.
know, like we've all experienced where you get frustrated or almost grumpy, angry when your kid's getting hurt or could get hurt, and you have no control over the
Yeah.
scenario.
And I felt just like a kid.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
interesting that you said that,
Mhm.
is because that's exactly how I felt. And I wish at the time he'd have just said, well, it was a big old black bear.
Yeah.
But years later, he's like, oh, okay, now he kind of, he was nervous with me climbing a ladder. It's like, dude, I played pro soccer. Let's
Yeah.
calm down. I'm not
Yeah.
like an
lot of-
invalid here.
A lot of ladders on that soccer field. Yeah, it's awesome. So that those were the first real experiences, and I legitimately wanted to have an experience with archery equipment that was more just spot and stalk, where the bear is in their natural habitat, and I'm approaching them or seeing them walk on a trail. There's not a bait or a lure that has brought them in, and so with different circumstances there, stopped doing stuff with the show, and that's a story I can tell at another point in time. But I would say that was 12 years ago that second bow hunt happened, and then somewhere in that time frame, and then I got an invite to go up and preview meet the pastor and his wife and family that we help support through Yukon River Knives,
Which is Alaskan Inland Mission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
AIM.
and they are they do a lot of intercoastal ministry work on the Yukon. COVID has really changed the landscape of that. A lot of the villages are still closed to outside influence, and I think I think they've utilized the fear of that to really isolate them from
In
cultural
Alaska.
stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take you off course there.
So
They got the same governor we do? Sorry, that was uncalled for. Because it's been 4 years and they're still closed.
yeah,
Wow.
it was not uncalled for either. But so there's there's a reality of that whole space up there, though, where even though these are red-blooded American people, there's cultural shifts to
Mhm.
where they start to realize that the village life and the culture that they have cultivated for all those years, as modern era continues to be ushered in, they lose the feel of those things. And so Josh and Sylvia that are up there, he alluded to or believes that a lot of the fear they've utilized that as a tool to say, no, we're going to keep doing the things that we do, and we're going to be isolated and keep outsiders out. But that whole ministry was built on literally miles and miles and miles of river travel, and so
he visits all those different places, right?
Shifting. So they've shifted gears. He planted churches. He doesn't see himself as a pastor. He sees himself as a church planter, and yet this church that they planted, Alpine Baptist Church, in just outside of Palmer, in a place called Sutton, Alaska. He's been there enough years, and that church has grown extensively. God's doing a great work, but he's like, I keep asking God to bring us a pastor to this church so I can keep planting churches, and I'm still here pastoring this church. So I guess I'm the pastor here.
Right.
But that's that was a cool ministry thing, and I love any time that I get to travel in that space. There's so many opportunities to talk to people that are just outside your normal purview, and met a cool couple coming out of Chicago on the flight, and we talked. That flight was almost 6 hours. We talked probably 4 hours of that about spiritual things, about outdoors, about nature. And they're born and raised in the city, have no idea, can't fathom that you're literally trying to find a bear, just all those things. And
not to take a picture,
Yep.
you're going to take the bear home.
And so get to share the gospel with them, and then landed in Seattle and flew to Anchorage. And that flight was fantastic with a whole family of guys that were going up. They were going to spend 4 weeks building lodges for an outfitter up there, but it was the whole crew, and they were all at least professing believers, but just sharing faith stories. And the kind of patriarch of the family, he sat 2 seats over from me, and he shared just story after story of God's provision in his life, and he was all excited about the tab. I watched him when we got the Wi-Fi hooked up. He was searching, trying to find the tab.
There we go. Right, there we go.
So I don't know if he's still listening to our sermons or not.
Hopefully he's listening to the hunting stories on the podcast.
Sweet.
There you go.
And then, once you get into Anchorage, just the different culture there, and Anchorage itself is a considerably more liberal city. A lot of the pervasive movements progressively are there, and which is just hard for me to fathom. You're up in such a remote place, but the entirety of the time that you're there, you cannot look in any direction without seeing a snow-capped mountain.
Wow.
And Anchorage is just surrounded by the beauty of that wild nature feel. And as soon as we leave Anchorage, there's moose on the right, moose on the left, and we went and spent a couple days doing church stuff, and then we were able to get up into one of the, I can't remember what they call them exactly, but be like our state land. Is national forest something, but we went shed hunting for moose and found moose, and that was the first time that I had ever seen moose poop.
Really?
I think that needs to be addressed. I was fascinated by these round, perfect shaped pellets that were laying on the ground, and my mind is not able to comprehend that that's
moose.
Poop. Yeah. It looks just like deer pellets,
just
only
larger,
just oversized.
Like the size of an apricot or whatever. So it was pretty funny. I felt very out of my element when I asked what it was, and then he's like, "Dude, that's just poop." Oh, sweet. Thank you for not letting me pick it up and mull it over in my hand.
Mull it over.
But that whole hunt, then we loaded up a Hewitt Craft 20-foot Hewitt Craft boat, which is like a self-bailing boat. The whole front windshield is sealed when you close it, and then there's a canopy that comes up over the top of you that had a few leaks in it, but for the most part, when you'd hit a wave and it splash up over the front of the boat, it's the hull self bails, and so it's keeping the water out. But we're loaded to the hilt. We were probably overloaded heading out.
Are you on a river, a lake, or are you on the ocean?
We're on in Prince William Sound.
Got it. Okay. So it can still get very rough there.
It was brutally rough.
Yeah. Okay.
And if anybody wanted to check it out on Hunting the Harvest Instagram, there's a short reel or video that kind of gives a little bit of the perspective of what that boat ride looked like. But as we took off out of Whittier, you drive down to get to Whittier. You drive through this tunnel it was formed in World War II, and they built it for the railroad to be able to traverse through this mountain. But it's a single lane. The railroad tracks are still utilized, and so you're driving over the railroad tracks, a tire on each side of the railroad track. And it's 2.9 miles long, something like that. But the south directed traffic goes at the top of the hour, and then the north directed traffic goes at the half hour mark. And so, you're just waiting at all these rows with these green lights and red lights, and your lane goes, your lane goes, your lane goes, and you pop through this tunnel. And the weather was not great on the north side of the tunnel, but as soon as you get through the south side of the tunnel, the snow levels are increased dramatically.
It's like two different weather zones.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Completely.
like on either side of a mountain.
Multiple different things were happening. Like on the north side, it was rain. On the south side, it was flurries and mixed rain, and tons of snow and a more humid atmosphere. And you're like, but this is what we're doing. You just have to shift in your mind. We're gonna set up a tent. We're gonna camp in. It's gonna get down in the 20s tonight, and it's raining right now. It could be snow tonight. We might wake up to snow in the morning. But as we load everything final into the boat, we launch. You come out of the sound into the actual waters, and it goes from real chill, calm conditions to all of a sudden it's just wham, and we're slamming, and he's like, they've called for 2-footers, and it's one of those moments where you're watching the captain, and he's just driving, and everything's good, and we come to a point that's called Decision Point, and it's called that because
so many sermons are coming into my head right now.
Yeah. I have 3 illustrations specifically from this trip that I probably will save for sermons.
That's fine.
But when you come to Decision Point, it's obviously like we have to make a legit decision. Is it too dangerous for us to continue or not? And he said, well, since we're going to head down the left side here of Prince William Sound, let's get around that last point. And he said a lot of times right here at Decision Point, we've got multiple different currents along with wind directions, kind of the mountains funneling in. And it's not a fair assessment of the wind and the waves. And so as we make our way out past the last point, he stops the boat for a minute. And when we're sitting there, we're dropping between the waves, and the waves are taller than the boat, so you can't see the horizon. And but as he's driving, it's just literally like, whoa, boat comes up and then slams down, water comes in, just over and over.
I thought this was a bear hunt.
Yeah, but
Castaway.
The worst mistake I made was as we were leaving the Sound, I have really good cell signal, and so I'm texting my wife, and the waves are getting bad, and I said something like, "Wow, it's really rough out here," and then I go to text her something else, and I lost signal. So that was literally the last text as I'm leaving the South.
No, not a good move.
Like, so stupid. I know better than that. Like, everything's great. You should see the sun shining over the mountains. It's fine. But we got to one of the bays off of Prince William Sound, and he's like, let's just take a break in here. And as soon as you pull past where all the current and the wind is, it is like glass. And you just sit back there like,
made it.
We made it. And our the bay that we were actually staying in was maybe 4 miles from that bay, but it was kind of like, all right, there's 2 more bays on the way there. If it gets rough, we're just gonna pull in one of those bays and we can camp there. And it was rough. It was brutal because the aluminum Hewitt Craft boats aren't. It's not like riding in a fiberglass boat where you just kind of traverse over the top of the waves. It was just more of a beating. But we get into the bay, and our campsite was available. We pull up on the shore and just start unloading. It's raining. It rained from the whole ride there, but then it rained for 56 straight hours. And it was just like a low pressure, like light rain, nothing super storm-like, but you're just damp the whole time. And I'm cycling through clothes and hanging clothes in the boat and in the tent and putting heaters under them, trying to dry them out. There's no place to dry stuff out. I told the guys that if we had to go one more day without sunny weather, I didn't know what I was going to wear.
Out of clothes.
So I'm following your story with Google, and Prince William Sound, there's orcas in there.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the zoo because you're hunting bear, and you've already talked about moose with apricot poo.
Yep.
And now it's like, okay, you survived the ocean, but I mean, that whole coast is just inlets and little bays, big bays, and I don't know what they're called, but like one of the pictures where the glacier, where
the slides,
the slides,
yeah. There's interesting in Whittier. There's glacial tours that are leaving out on these like pseudo cruise ship looking things. A lot of Alaskan cruises which shipped out there.
My parents did one of those.
Yep. It was very funny. There was a family that was from Tennessee, and they drove up to Whittier, and they were waiting. They were in line with us to go through the tunnel.
From Tennessee.
And so I'm, like usual, I'm just gonna go meet and greet. I got 22 minutes. Like I'm not gonna sit in here. And so I'm back there, and the guy's like, "Well, what do you do for a living?" I said, "Well, I'm a preacher." And he goes, "Praise God, Baptist." So I said, "Well, I've got some Baptist roots, man."
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. Well, in their mind, they had Whittier as being something that it was not, and so they pull in, And we're over there unhooking the boat and everything. And he pulls up next to it. He's like, "Did we miss something?" And I was like, "Why? Is this it?" And I'm like, "Never been here, but as far as I know, this is all you got." And so they're like, we just assumed with all the tours and things that left out of here that it would be something more than this. And I was like, well, looks like there's a coffee shop over there. There's a gas station and maybe a place to eat. What more do you need?
That was all that was in Whittier.
Yeah, it's a very small. There's like a high-rise apartment complex that sits really awkwardly, but that's where everybody that works Whittier and that surrounding area, they all live in one space.
Why would you have a high-rise? Okay, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different story.
So
got to protect all that land.
Yeah,
but they have more land than like the rest of the continental United States.
It's amazing up there. So that first night we head out to bear hunt, and a lot of the bear activity would be more consistent in the evening. So we set up camp, and if you've ever set up a tent in rain conditions,
not fun.
No,
done it twice.
And I'm wearing rain gear. I've told a sermon illustration about this, but you just create this inferno of heat as you're working inside of this rain gear. So I'm not comfortable. I'm soaked from sweat, along with the rain that runs down your neck when you try to take your hood off and cool down for a second. But every time that you would look up, it was like, I'm in the most beautiful place in the world. Back to work. Get your tent done, get it set up. The inside of the tent's damp, the outside of the tent's soaked. We put up a tarp and made a little seating place so we could hang out. But, everything's wet. And we go out to hunt then, and I have all this gear on because it's cold, it's raining, and the inside of our little canopy, we ended up building a little tarp system inside of it that helped a ton. But at the outset, anytime you would shift forward, rain would dump in on you. And so trying to get my mind around this archery side of things, because everybody else brought rifles and I have my bow over there. If you go on a hunt like this with a group of dudes that are rifle hunters that are looking at you like you're insane because you have your bow, you're already behind the 8-ball. Because if everybody in the boat is like, we want to bow hunt, we think bow hunting is great, and we're willing to put that extra time in for the bow hunt, then when you conjure up this idea of how you're going to climb up the side and you're going to go around this, get the wind in the right direction, you're going to sneak down, and then they're all with you. But if they're rifle hunters, they're saying, bro, you could just sit right here and shoot the bear. Why are we doing all this?
Full disclosure. Josh, are you the rifle guy or the archer in that scenario?
I'd still go archery.
Yeah, he's 100% the archery guy.
Mm-hmm.
I love you guys. I'm going rifle.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not saying it's one better than the other. But
No.
you happen to be the archer on this hunt in this beautiful place.
Yep.
And so there's a little conflagration of what's the tactic,
Yeah.
right?
And I had,
Because what is the tactic? Is it like I thought I heard you say, like you're scanning the coast. So do you actually hunt from like you start in the boat?
yeah,
Because
so
you can cover more ground.
we
and
go
just
into these little harbors or these little bays, and we were in a bay. Actually, I probably won't say the bay. No, I'm just kidding. It was called Bettles, and we sat in there, and it's perfectly calm. I have a little video clip there on that Instagram page, but it's wild because the one time that I open up the canopy, it's just rocking. We're about to. Not sure about the longevity of our lives, kind of rocking.
So it's not calm again.
But now we're back in this bay,
Okay.
and when I open it again, it's like, I mean, there's not a wave, not a ripple. It's just a light rain, snow-capped, snow everywhere. But right on the shore, it's this green grass that's growing, and that's what all the bears are coming down on the mountains to eat. And so we sat there for about 6 hours. We had a little buddy heater in there. We had our jet boils making our mountain house meals, and just staying warm and chatting, telling stories, low volume stories. And then as it got close to 10 o'clock at night, still light out, stays light there 24 hours a day, just different degrees of light. We kind of cruised down to the other end of the bay, and I'm back talking to Ron and Ron Stepp, and we hear Josh say, "There's a bear." And I was like, "Say again?" He's like, "There's a bear." And in that moment, were like, you have to shift your mindset from this lackadaisical chill, space that we've been in for 6 hours to, all right, you got to turn that killer instinct on and determine what the best mode of opportunity to take that bear is. And so we try to do the whole bear thing with the bow, and then to make a long story short, I come back to the boat and I'm like, okay, can I borrow anyone's rifle? And Ron had a 338 Weatherby RPM. Shout out to Weatherby and Adam Weatherby, Bible believing, church planting fool. So Ron had his rifle, and he said it's 4 inches low at 300, dead on at 200, and at 100 it is 2 inches high. Mm-hmm. So the tide was out to where we could no longer get the boat to the shore. So we're probably 350 to 400 yards from the bear out in the bay, but it's only like 8 inches, 10 inches deep the water is. So the boat's just barely floating still. And so we just climb right off the side of the boat in the water, and I got a trigger stick tripod. Josh is filming me, and we just slowly started easing toward this bear. And for whatever reason, they don't sense the threat. Yeah, like on that's the...
Sorry, I got the hunter plan right here. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah, that's the exact moment that we see the bear. But as you're walking toward it, for whatever reason, there's not a perceived threat of you coming from the water. So this bear constantly has his face and body angled towards the trees and toward the mountain. And that was his, where his perceived threat would come from. And so we'd take a few steps, and then if he'd picked his head up, we'd just freeze. And he'd do that kind of like big, movement with his neck real slow, but he couldn't smell us. Wind direction was perfect. And I wanted to get to 200 yards because he said it was dead on at 200, and you're using somebody else's rifle you've never shot before. I don't want to do any guesswork or calculations in the moment. And so I got to 196 yards and took the shot, and it was the bear dropped immediately. We had thought this bear is a big bear, and then we're walking up to it, we're like, this is a big bear.
And so it was like almost 7 feet.
Yeah. And when you have like I've had animals where I have shot them from distance, and you walk up to them and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't what I thought it was. I'm thankful. But in this moment, you walk up and you can see it legitimately in my reaction. Like, that's a big bear.
Oh, dude, your face looked like your youngest son.
Yeah.
When he's excited about something random.
Yep. And by the way, Lily Vermilia made that reel for me.
Oh, did she?
She did. That was,
she's got some skills.
I can guarantee that was the first time she's ever made a bear reel.
Wow.
So, but we just had an incredible time celebrating, and you're in a camp with 4 dudes that are Jesus loving fools, and so there's the celebration of creation, there's a celebration of God's provision and his goodness. Both of the other guys, won't go through all the details of their stories, but got to help both of them with their hunts, and both of them took great bears, and the time spent there. Ron Stepp, that was with us and that invited me on this hunt, that's him praying there.
Yeah, I was going to say, who's the older gentleman praying?
Yep, we met years ago at a wild game dinner, and God just knit our hearts together, helped us start hunting the harvest and get into that ministry world, and he's just been a faithful brother and friend for years and years and years, helping with all kinds of different things. But he initiated this idea of building a knife that would be to support missions and ministry work. And then his friend Owen Baker, who is Josh and Sylvia's father-in-law, Josh's father-in-law, he's the one that actually designed the knife and the Alaska series to start doing that. But we get all done with the hunt, and when you finally come back into the sound, one other thing that we did while we were there, I wanted to catch spot prawns, the giant shrimp,
Yes.
And so
I was like, are those shrimp? Are
Yeah.
they crawdads?
I
They're
know.
pink and look delicious.
Yeah.
You sent me that photo. My mouth watered like a glutton when I
So-
saw. I didn't even know what they were.
Josh had a spot marked that they had dropped those pots before, but it's 600 feet down, and we didn't have a pot puller. And so he drops the 2 pots, and they're connected together. But when you're pulling them up full of anything, it's like pulling sheets of plywood up off the bottom. And so it was a hilarious adventure getting those up. And then there's a big giant a snow crab or whatever hooked onto the side of the cage as well that we weren't sure what the legality was, so we let it go. But then we went back and quickly cleaned. You just do a little twist pop of the head on those spot prawn, and it deveins them. And then we boiled the salt water right from the ocean
man.
right on the side and dropped them in, and had
a feast. It
we had a
looked
little
like
plate of butter that was you just
See, now it's
outstanding.
starting.
Butter, salt,
It's
works for me.
starting.
But
Yeah,
the hilarious part of that whole thing is you don't want to waste a single one of them.
no,
And so
because they're not going to keep. Like, how are you going to get them back?
we had 147 of them, and they're giant.
Yeah.
And so I'm into my 30s eating the number of these spot prawns, and it's starting to hurt. Like it's a painful scenario.
Okay, Lord.
Yeah.
I will not waste your
Yeah.
creation.
And
The struggle is the glory.
yeah. So, but just such a fun experience and time spent up there with good people and getting to see God do great work. That's the probably the most surreal part of the whole thing is when you're sitting with other believers and they're doing a gospel ministry in an entirely different environment, entirely different space with different people, different culture. But the gospel still has the same impact as they hear the story of what Christ did on their behalf. And so just a beautiful experience all together. That's the gist of the bear story.
It's so podcast family, if you've never been on Hunting the Harvest, that's Adam's ministry, he and his sons, and the tab's all 100% into it and behind it. But if you go on Instagram, Hunting the Harvest, you can watch this video. It says, a brief glimpse into a trip I'll remember for a lifetime. Giant bears, spot prawns, marine life like I've never seen before, made a successful hunt all the more meaningful. Alaska's a place I always hate to leave. Planning my way back, always thank you to is that Roach?
Yep,
Roach
family.
fam for being amazing hosts. So that'll help you put like a little glimpse to that. Josh, have you ever been to Alaska?
I have not.
What's the most beautiful place you've been to? Or have you been to a place like that just captured your imagination? Like just hearing him talk about it, I wasn't trying to be distracting. I wanted to see it. So I started in Google and then I just went. It is gorgeous. And it's that northern Pacific kind of always damp, rainy, but you talk about moss. It's there when I first saw the big giant, on that west coast, the first time I saw the big giant redwoods, and I don't know if they have any of those in Alaska, but it's just shocking. Have you ever been to a place like that?
I would say the Grand Canyon was probably like that for me. I think I'd much rather drift that direction, but as far as just that big like shock,
I've only seen pictures. Have you been to the Grand Canyon?
Not yet.
Yeah, I've only seen pictures, but I've heard it just literally breathtaking.
Yeah, for sure.
But there was no hunting there. You
No.
were just completely as a tourist?
Yeah, we were driving before my brother deployed. Each time in the Marine Corps, when he deployed overseas, we would drive his vehicles back and forth. And one time we just made a point to just go about an hour out of our way and stop and.
Oh, it's worth several hours out of the way is what I'm told.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just don't get too close to the edge.
Yeah, we were stressing my dad out because we just see how close we could get
Oh,
before.
come on. Yeah.
And my brother, he's just a little out there, so he's just like, well, let's see
Well,
what's
he's a
over there.
Marine. He's deploying. He's
Right.
not afraid.
Right.
So that part of Alaska is it's considered rainforest. And so when you leave the beach and start to climb up into the mountain, it's like what you would picture a Jurassic World experience would be like. It's these just massive cedar trees, and they're tangled and fallen down, and root bases, and everything is covered in moss. And then at this time of year, late May, there's snow everywhere. And the piles of snow that have slid off the mountain and have accumulated are 5, 6, 7 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them would support your body weight, and then others would not support your body weight.
You got to be careful which
Yeah.
one you grab
And then
onto.
you just drop right into the snow bank, and then you look like a turtle that's got flipped over in its shell trying to get out of it. But But yeah, just a wild experience to even fathom.
So the reason I asked that question is I've not been to Alaska. I'm a Caribbean guy, but I don't care if it's the Caribbean. I don't care if it's early morning in the lower peninsula or the upper, sitting in a deer stand, a deer blind, sitting on the ground. As a friend of mine, a preacher from Mississippi, wrote this, and he's actually spoke at the Tab, this poem called When the Woods Wake Up.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as a not experienced hunter as either one of you, experienced the joy of hunting way before I shot the first white-tailed deer. And I wasn't expecting it. And it's profoundly theological, but it's going to sound not very manly. And that is beauty. Like beauty, there's a theology of beauty. Specifically, wherever you find it, you can find beauty in people. You can find beauty in a moment. There's beauty in a meal, but beauty in the creation of God isn't just, sunset. Because I have a lot of those in my family. Sunset, rainbow, double rainbow, get a pic. That's beauty, but it isn't just this. There's a seriousness. There's a weight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm trying to say, but we promise we're going to tie this stuff, not just an awesome story about not just what God's doing in Alaska and an awesome bear hunting story that I can follow on Instagram. But the first thing that stuck out to me is every time you tell a story about one of those places, there's something in you that's attracted to that beauty. Mm-hmm. You saw it at the Grand Canyon. You've seen it because you guys are nodding. Like, is there anything that comes to your mind, either from Scripture or just your own description of what does that tell us about God and His character and His nature? Because there's a lot of people that's like, oh, creation's so beautiful. Romans 1 talks about the testimony of creation actually is against us, that do not acknowledge that there's a God, and we seek to worship creation instead of the Creator. But the fact that He made it and He called it good, is there anything that jumps out to you? Any observations at all in your own relationship with God, like when you're struck by beauty? Or is it just, it's just there?
I think for me, it's just like the enjoyment side of it that we, like He made that for our enjoyment. And obviously other things too, but like, that's just what first come to mind is like the enjoyment of it and just how like detailed it is. And it's just like, how do you not believe that there's a God as far as how detailed everything, whether it's the Alaskan wilderness, whether it's the Grand Canyon out in the desert, whether you're in Michigan, like just the diversity within nature and just how beautiful it is and how
so like I'm even thinking in your role as a camp director when you're not dealing with facility issues, freaked out parents, kids that aren't interested in being a part of the system, right? But I imagine you brought people into camp situations where they hadn't seen that kind of beauty, even at a Michigan camp, like even at Camp Living Waters, which I'm assuming, I've seen the pictures, but in summer was gorgeous. And your wife now working with Cran Hill camps, right? And you're bringing people that don't take the time because they live in Lansing. Yep. And at night, it's hard to see the stars when you live in a city. Yep. I can remember kids just going, "Oh, there's stars." They've never looked up from their
Can't
device.
Really see them, and whether it's a device or whether it's the street lights, anything like that. Just to remove yourself and get back into nature. Like there's there's a beauty of being distracted from what is the norm. And, now transitioning into where, like, with my company, like, taking care of, like, whitetail hunting properties and just being able to set up that place where people can, these owners can come and just get away from that. I mean, like I said, I got guys in Naples. I've got guys, all over Michigan, and they're so busy with their life and setting these properties up to where they can get away from and distract themselves to rejuvenate themselves to get back in, because they're all grinding away, but to have that place of peace and quiet where they can just sit back and see what God is, and being able, like, from my perspective, being able to like minister to them and have that, just like God just lays it out there to where I can utilize what he has done for the property and built, to have these natural conversations just come up. Like, there's more to this than just coming and sitting in a deer stand. Like, look at the beauty of how this food plot came up, or, where you're at, to where it's just a beautiful tool that I'm able to use to, like, show the love that God has for us. And, like, I mean, he made this for our enjoyment. He made these critters that we can go out and hunt for our enjoyment.
See, that's actually I'm actually glad you said that, because that was one of the things we're going to touch on. Is your job right now is managing property for, like, I assume these guys own the property, but you are, like, your vocation right now is you manage these properties. So when they want to come out of wherever, big city world, there's a local that's been managing this property and tell them where the deer are.
Yep, absolutely.
You might have the best gig in the world.
I know.
There are times there are times that I've hung out with him and seen some of the things that are taking place, and that is the first thought that comes to my mind. I don't know that. I mean, I really love my job at the Tab. Please don't misunderstand.
Please, come on.
But this is
like, I get a little nervous when you're like, Alaska's my favorite place in the world. I'm like, no, it's not. Come on, man.
No, God has called me to Buckley. This is where we're at.
Praise God.
But it's been really fun, even just to watch him develop a piece of property from something that is naturally rugged, which often makes it devoid of the proper nutrition for a whitetail and makes it devoid of the proper habitat and cover. And then you start to implement these different things, and it's enhancing it to a spot where you're able to really truly enjoy the fullness of what it's there for. So there's that care piece, which I think connects us back to the word dominion that God gives us in Genesis, that he gives man dominion over the earth. But isn't it wild that mankind is asked, or mankind generally runs to nature to be rejuvenated?
Yes.
They run to nature for rest. They run to nature for that removal from just the normal mundane daily rituals of life. And I think when we really see what God says in, like you alluded to, Romans 1:20, the invisible attributes of God are clearly seen, so they're without excuse. Where are they seeing this? In his creation. I can not only go into that creation with expectancy of seeing who God is, I know that if my mind is in the right place, that I will meet him in a way that is different than I meet him anywhere else. Just the thought that when you're walking in anywhere, Alaska, Michigan's gorgeous. Our bays are unbelievable. Just sitting out on the boat and watching the way that the water moves in the sunset the other night. There is every moment of that we spend, we have to reflect back and say, okay, God created us for his joy and pleasure. He created creation so that we could find pleasure here on this earth. Even in its fallen state, all creation groans because of sin. It is still remarkable every single day. And when I realize why it's here, it's for my pleasure and my enjoyment. God made it literally for me. If my wife makes me a meal, which she does all the time, you don't want me making meals, I can work a grill effectively.
A griddle.
But if she makes me a meal, that meal, she will eat that meal as well. But that meal is designed to bring joy to her family. When I eat the meal, my immediate response is not, man, I'm sure glad I worked this week so we could buy this food. My response is, babe, thanks. This is so good. The creation, always in its right state and right mindset, causes us to reflect back to the Creator. And that's why creation is here. So when I'm in Alaska, I'm not sitting there thinking about selfish pursuits in those moments. I'm awestruck by what I'm seeing in every direction. And the awe is creator awe. It's not just, oh, that's a cool mountain over there. It's that God knew mankind would set foot on this earth, they would set foot in this place, and the only thing that their minds can do is be in awe. It's mind-blowing. Some of the flights into these places are just like, what? Part of it's like, man, I have so many more mountains I gotta cover, and I'm 45. Like, I have 20 really good years left to hike. You know, that process happens too. I gotta get to work. But there's also the just the reflection that we're such a minuscule piece of the entire creativity of this world, and the moments that we do get to enjoy in it need to be always reflecting back to our Creator.
Yeah, and that's something I've observed because, and this isn't a political thing, but people that aren't from the hunting culture, the hunting environment, that just watch animals on Net Geo or on Netflix, can't even fathom, and they think generally, and again, I don't want to go too far down this road, but this is our audience, so they know what I'm talking about, that, hunters, we're just bloodthirsty, rednecks that probably have too many assault rifles and want to invade the Capitol, right? Or we don't really care about the animals. What I have found is outdoorsmen care more about creation than anyone that hasn't been there. Like they are more about conservation, the real ones, more about conservation, more about even this thing that we're pursuing in order to take its life as God commanded in order to eat. We're also stewards, right? And so what I generally see is a deeper theology among Christian hunters of God's creation and beauty. And the reason that I'm kind of just listening to you talk about Prince William Sound, which I Googled, and I'm like, oh, that's a real place, and that's gorgeous, right? And there's a little part of me that knows it's saltwater and makes me excited, right? Because even though I live around the Great Lakes, I'm a salt guy, right? This theology of beauty, it comes from God's perfection. I've often been asked, I was just asked this on a Zoom call with a young man and a young woman I've never physically met, and there were some apologetics questions about God, and he dialed into, well, why would God create a world where man had free will? What does this have to do with creation? I'll tell you. Is the answer, and I trained with Norman Geisler, and this wasn't original with me, this is from someone that first taught me this, is God had to create a world where he gave the possibility for sin and evil to exist, because God can only do the best that he possibly can. This speaks to his perfection and his holiness, his goodness. And so a world where there was not the possibility of evil is not the best world possible. And God can only do the best that's possible. I mean, that right there, I can sit about or think about in a deer stand, applying it to the different moments of my life that I don't understand God's purpose and plan. I could think about that all day. That God can only do the best possible. God can't do an average job. I've done average jobs on things. I've done good is good enough. Well, it'll have to do, and I've got my grandfather's, voice in my mind saying any job worth doing is worth doing right. Any job worth doing to God is worth doing perfectly. That includes creation. So he creates the best world possible. Some of it is for our enjoyment. Some of it is just for his glory. He's just, and I don't mean this in a sinful way, he's just showing off. Like with Alaska, with the Grand Canyon. And my response is I can ignore it. And there's a direction I'm going here. This first hit me in the Abaco Islands in the Bahamas. I don't know how I got there. I don't have the money. I'm a preacher, okay? But it was one of the situations like you. It was a ministry thing and then a connection. Why don't you come to our house and bring your whole family, because we know you're not the biggest snow fan. I think it's pretty, but I want to look at it through the window, right? So I find myself in March like snorkeling on this island that a lot of people can't get to. And I shouldn't have been able to get there. But by the generosity of God through some other people, there I am. And we're snorkeling, and my kids are having a good time, and my wife's enjoying the boat. That's fine. I mean, she's enjoying the beauty. Her reaction as a Michigan girl on a bright sunny day, leaving the main island to go out to this island where we were going to stay. I mean, that just shows you right there. I don't have the coin for that, right? And the water is the purest aquamarine, like turquoise. It's blinding. And this little Michigan girl, my wife turns to me and goes, I've only seen this in pictures. I thought it was photoshopped. Is that a real color? I mean, it's just that bright. So I find myself, we're snorkeling, and I like to dive down and pretend I'm Scuba Steve or whatever, and I'm like down under this little coral reef, and I saw the most brightly colored, I mean, the fish are all over the place, but this one fish I'd never seen before. And there were a couple things that struck me about that fish. If you know anything about coral reef fish, they never leave more than maybe 20 feet from that spot. They're going to live and die right there. And I'm at a place where nobody goes. And I'm at a reef that nobody knows about because the dude that we're with, it's his home on this island, and he's going to take you to one reef that you'll never see a tourist because the tourists are all on the other side of the island chain. And their lifespan is maybe a couple of months tops, those little tiny reef fish. And I knew all of this stuff, and I'm swimming down there, and I'm looking at this little fish, and it's just beautiful. I mean, it wasn't pulling a Finding Nemo, right? It's just beautiful. And I couldn't stop thinking about that all day. I'm probably the only human that ever saw that fish in his home, in his little spot. And God painted him or her, I can't tell the difference in coral reef fish, beautiful for me.
Yep.
In his sovereignty, I'm going to do the best possible coral reef fish, and I'm going to make it so happen that he's right there. His lifespan, there's no one else visiting that reef in the whole time that we're there. And no one went to that side of the reef, and no one saw that little fish. And the beauty was there, but it's also in Prince William Sound. It's the majestic beauty of an orca that comes up alongside your, what kind of craft was it again?
Hewitt craft.
A Hewitt craft, which I saw that boat. I'm not getting in that boat.
Yeah.
I don't think, I mean, I want to be in a different kind of boat.
It felt big until we got out there. And
Yeah.
you're like, this is a little boat.
Or when the mist rises, when the sun comes up in a deer stand. God can only do the best possible. All of creation speaks for his glory. And I was overcome with, if I don't stop to look at it and see it and appreciate it, that's on me. God doesn't make me go there and see it. You can stay in the boat. You don't have to snorkel. You can stay in Michigan. You don't have to go to Alaska. You cannot take the hour diversion and miss the Grand Canyon. And this isn't an appeal to, hey, podcast family, get outside. No, it's more like see God. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense at all.
Yeah, for sure. Because
God has worked and is always working. He works in our lives. He works through our kids. He works, maybe it's because I'm a preacher. I just see sermons and devotionals and his glory everywhere, in laughter upstairs before we came down here. When Matthew had his first piece of pie, and he might have a second one, he's going to have a second one later. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, to me, that's what it speaks to me about God. How many people go through life and they never stop to appreciate anything? Their wife, their kid, the fact that they have breath in their lungs, and they live and die with no need to see God, appreciate God, or to become a worshiper. Because when you spoke of the awe, that's worship.
No question.
That's the fear of God. That's worship. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think there's a misnomer that happens when you think about the outdoorsman or the person that enjoys the outdoors. There's almost like this misnomer that they're simple-minded, and you've met me, so you know there is some truth to that reality.
So.
But
I think you're brilliant.
Yeah, but the beauty of what we get to see as creation lovers, as hunting and fishing fools, is that the simple things that God has created for us, I can find joy. Last night we're hiking with Graylin in the backpack. Rach and I are hiking. We come across this little yellow flower that I've never seen before. It kind of has like that snapdragon look of a flower, but it's grows in a ring, and it has that same explosion but it's yellow. It's bright yellow. And here's this whole landscape of green. You've got the spruces, you've got the all of the aspen growth that's coming up, the green grasses and all this stuff. And then there's just this pow of yellow, like the brightest yellow. And we're in Grayland's almost 2, so we're showing him all of these things that he thinks are pretty. He says pretty. We say, where did the pretty thing come from? Comes from God. And so he goes, God. Yes, it comes from God. That might be the most simple little thing. But a person that doesn't enjoy creation goes about life trying to find it in things that will never satisfy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because that is what God made it for, is for our satisfaction, our enjoyment. And that brings him glory. When he put man into the garden with free will, without that, we are just robots going through a process with no option for emotion, no option for praise, no option for glory, and
no option for love.
For sure. And so that having that ability to choose, when I choose to bring glory to Christ or to glorify him or to be in awe of him because of his creation, that creator then receives a glory that is unlike anything else. When I'm stuck in the city, I'm always pursuing things, in whether it's financial things, whether it's just material possessions, whatever it might be. But I'm pursuing things to find a joy. And I think that they never find the true satisfaction that you find when you're a little kid sitting there going, God made that.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like, at its simplest form, we are then again, I don't know what that flower was.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever see another flower like that.
I don't know my flowers.
Yeah. But in that moment, that flower, where did it direct my attention?
Yeah.
To the creator.
Vertical.
It's a silly little flower.
Yep.
But my kid in my backpack is back there holding it and pulling the petals off of it.
Yeah, of course. He's got to see how it works. He's a dude.
but the I was thinking of it even just last night. I'm pointing out the deer tracks. And at one point I must have said that those look like buck tracks, because he doesn't say deer tracks. Everything's buck tracks.
Big buck.
Yeah.
That's what Gray says. Big buck.
Oh, yeah.
So, but to go back to what you're saying, our natural bent is to love nature and to love the creation that we're in. And I think the more modernized world that we live in, the less we reflect on those things. And I think it's naturally directs us towards a disconnect with the creator, where those of us that we're just happy being in nature, it's perceived as being simple-minded. No, we're getting back to that God-given design in nature that brings him glory, brings us rest, brings us just to a general awe of who he is. And I think that's what and how and why God created the way he did.
There's I dialed up that. I don't know if you can see that. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
That is we're looking at a picture, if you're on audio, of, I think it's called the Eagle Nebula. So about, 15 years ago, I think, maybe longer, the Hubble telescope, which to me sounded like a boondoggle. When they first sent it up when I was probably a teenager, and then it's got to spend years going to wherever it lives. And then it's the years of taking pictures, and then however long it takes to get back, right, up into space. And it's taking pictures of places that humans, as far as I know, as the Lord tarries, as my grandpa used to say, will never go. And without technology, without the ability to put satellites into space and make telescopes and teach them how to communicate and computers to send all this kind of stuff, we're never going to see that, is my point. The average bear is going to live and die. Some dude in India, or the dudes in India or Haiti or anywhere for the last couple thousand years never saw these pictures. So we take a picture of the furthest that our technology can reach into creation, and what do we find? Beauty. Whether we go looking for it or not, whether some, NASA scientists decided, it'd be a good idea, let's take pictures of creation, see if anyone's out there, or see what we can learn about our own planet. That's what they always say. It's always this jibber jabber. They just wanted to take pictures far away.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of these photos, these galaxies, there's unbelievable beauty. And this speaks back, like, look at that. I mean, that's shocking. I mean, it's better than the fireworks we're going to see over the 4th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's a tiny little reef fish, a glorious black bear, you go to the deepest part of the Grand Canyon, just, I'm told the color schemes change there by the hour with the layers, from reds to oranges to the furthest that we can possibly see, places we'll never visit. God can only do the best possible, and it's beautiful. So when we sing songs about, there's one song that I'm not going to sing, but it's in my head, and one of the very first lines is, "Your glory is so beautiful," right? These aren't just prom songs written to Jesus. We're talking about man stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think where I was going with that was, it isn't that where you live, or even to the person who's listening is like, well, I'm just never into creation. But there's beauty all around us. And God, it speaks to his glory, and it speaks to that element of worship, and it does direct our hearts towards him. I'm thinking right now, walking on a beach and on the Gulf when my daughters were all little, and I love a night walk on the beach. And Mama's tired because we had little ones, but I took the 3 oldest on a night walk, and that's just, the water's calm, and there's a lot of houses, but because of the turtles, you have to cut your lights because it messes with, the sea turtles come back to the place where they were born to lay their eggs. It's amazing. We've gotten to see 2 or 3 massive sea turtles at night dumping their eggs. And you just sit there and watch, and you can see it by starlight, right? Well, we're walking along, and there were 2 things on the same walk that was just shocking that spoke to this. Was as we walked, we could see, I noticed it first, and I pointed out to the girls, and they couldn't stop seeing it, is the little glow because we were right near the water's edge. And so the sand is wet. So a little wave would come up gently because the water was calm, and then would go out. And when you would step at a little wet footprint, you'd see this little, it's like a lightning bug glow, and then it'd be gone. Every step, lightning bug glow, and you'd be gone. And there's a college intern college interns on four-wheelers that are patrolling, and I stopped one of them because I'm like you. I'm like, hey, where do you go to school? Because I knew they're scientists. I go to Florida State, sir. I go, what are you doing here? Oh, we're watching for turtles. We're marine biologists major. I said, great. Tell my kids what this stuff is. And they were great. These 2 college students just got off, and they go, well, kids, what that is, and they showed us how to do it. This is called bioluminescence. This is the algae. This is what the whales eat, And one of my kids, a SpongeBob fan, is like, is that plankton? Exactly. That is plankton. But it glows, and it's beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. Again, it's back to, like you had said, Josh, about the design of creation that God has made for us, that we don't stop to think about. This wasn't by accident, And then we're walking, it's dark, and I just look up, and it's shocking. Because when it's flat, and there's no city, and there's no lights, and you're on the ocean, it's like this canopy. Isn't there a psalm somewhere that says that talks about the canopy of the earth or something like that? And my Sophie, she's 8, and I'm like, guys, look up there. And they're all like, whoa, that's amazing. And I'm just having this dad moment, well, I have daughters, you have sons, or you have a daughter and 2, but I just 3 little monkeys, right? And Sophie, the youngest, she looks up, and she looks down, and she goes, it's like an umbrella. And I was like, yeah, it's like an umbrella of stars.
Yeah. Love it. It's perfect.
Yeah, so I don't know what that whole rant was about, but you inspired me today.
It's good.
A little bonfire action. Anything else you guys got off that? We didn't even get to jump into your scariest bear story. You didn't see the bear? Do you have a scary whitetail story?
Not a whitetail. I was whitetail hunting when it happened, but
it?
Well, it was just ended up being a bobcat, but I thought it was much bigger. But
Oh,
I
you
was
seen
down
bobcat in the wild?
No, I was down in Ohio and hunting with a bunch of buddies down on way back in on some public ground down there, and I was the way we only had a few vehicles, so we'd drop each other off, and then so I was the first one to get dropped off, last one to get picked up. So I'm sitting there waiting for the guys to kind of slowly make back, but it's an hour past dark. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start hearing this like little girl like high pitched scream.
I've heard that scream.
Coming, and we were talking about different stuff, and we found some weird stuff out on the state land, like it looked like a pig snout and all, weird stuff out there and that. So I'm sitting there and just waiting, just chilling, like you said, looking up at the stars, just enjoying that, and start hearing that, and it just seems like it's getting closer and closer and closer, and and down there, like I have a concealed carry, so I have my pistol on me and all that, like I always do, and still I have this weird tingle down my back, like this is, at that time I thought it was like mountain lion, that kind of thing. So, I'm just a big strong guy, I can take this, and it's just getting closer and closer and closer. And
did you have the pistol handy?
Yeah, it was on my hip, but I hadn't.
I didn't know if you'd drawn down.
No. So before it got to that point, I was just like, you know what? All right, the guys aren't going to find out. I'm just going to, play it off like, I just got bored and started walking. Well, I packed up my climber. I had a tote hidden with all my scent stuff, packed it all and strapped it all to my stand, carried my bow in the bow case, and I just started walking down the road. And then a while later, they had, the guys got back, and I was like, oh yeah, I was just walking. And then we get back, we're sitting around the campfire hanging out, and I'm just like, all right. I actually got scared, guys. I had this, don't know what it is. It just sounds like, it's just eerie because it sounds like a little girl screaming.
Oh, it's piercing.
So I just packed up and started walking, and so that's.
I heard that sound for the first time last year, archery hunting, and I'd try to do the stalk. I wasn't in a tree stand or anything like that, and it was right here, right outside of Buckley, and I just sat down by a tree, and I must have read the wind wrong because I saw deer and then they wouldn't come in, and it's getting dark, and then all of a sudden I heard that. What do you call it? Is it a shriek?
It's like a shrill.
Yeah. It's the shrill, and it's like, is there a kid over there? And then I heard it again, and then I heard ducks taking off. I thought maybe because I've seen bobcat multiple times, but that was the first time I heard one, and that does, like when you said that, I felt it in the base of my spine.
Yeah.
Just a little tingle there.
If you haven't heard it yet, when you do hear it, if you're mocking Josh right this moment, you will not mock him any further.
No, it just, because it comes out of dead quiet. I mean, we're hunting, so it's dead quiet, and then all of a sudden, I'm not going to try to make that noise, but not to make it about bobcats, and we got to go. But I did also see one last year. At first, I thought it was a deer running right towards me, and then I was in a ground blind because I'd seen a whole bachelor group, and I was hoping they'd come back. They never did. At first, I thought it was a deer. Then I thought it was a mountain lion because it was that big, and it's running. I mean, it ended up running about 20 feet to the left of the blind, but it's he's coming right at me, and I'm like, do I get the bow out or get the phone out? Or I wasn't expecting, like you. I'm not thinking I need a pistol. I can see my Jeep from where I'm sitting. And it was so big, I thought it was a mountain lion. But when he passed, I could see it was a bobcat because he had no
little bobtail.
Yeah, but he was huge.
Yep.
They're around, people.
Oh, yeah.
I got some other ones. I'll tell you about the wolves sometime. But
the last quick black bear story.
Yeah, go for it.
A crazy thing happened this year, turkey hunting up in the UP. We had a Tom Goblin responding coming in, like, just on a rope. We were just for sure. Kenton was up to bat. It was his turn to shoot. So calling, turkey's gobbling, coming closer, and then all of a sudden just goes dead quiet. Gotta be right. And I'm whispering and we're looking, and then I'm like, he should have popped out by now. So I do one more call. Burp, 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 and out pops a black bear. I was like, oh, that's why the turkey went quiet. The black bear was coming to the sound of the call, and we ended up circling back about an hour later into that same area and calling, and Kenton ended up killing that gobbler. But that was the very first time. And that was a surreal moment because you see a black form coming through, which a tom strutting is, you see it's mostly black.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And those turkey knew he was there and they're gone.
oh yeah. Yep. They went quiet. I don't know that they necessarily vacated the premises because they were there when we came back later, but they definitely were like, oh, no, we're not talking anymore. We see the black bear. But that was a first. We've had coyotes run in when we're calling, goose hunting, duck hunting, coyotes come through. But that was the very first black bear ever called in. So it was an amazing moment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why this reminded me of this. I was in Oshawa, Ontario, on Father's Day, preaching at a Baptist church. They had an outreach event, and the outreach event was a car show. And so their parking lot is a free car show that all the people in the city of Oshawa, they call it the Detroit of Canada, even though a lot of the car companies have left. So it's just car show, bouncy houses. It's a big event, and there's a free breakfast, and then there's a Father's Day service, and then there's a evangelistic call, and then a barbecue. I mean, it goes all day. So imagine wherever there's a bunch of people close to water, because this is just, I can't remember the name of that lake there, but it's whatever the lake that the Niagara Falls is on the other side of. So whatever. There's, just like there's in Traverse City, seagulls are normally everywhere where there's lots of humans outside on a bright sunny day, where there's hot dogs and burgers and bouncy houses and trash and, just whatever. And I wasn't paying attention to that at the time. I'm walking around with the pastor. He's showing me this car and that car, and look at that dunk tank. And no, I'm not getting in the dunk tank. I got to drive home today, And I come across this little bit of grass, and he's just got some little temporary fencing that's only a couple feet high. And they weren't in cages, but they were tethered. There was a owl, this gorgeous owl, and this hawk. This huge hawk, and they're on either sides of this fence, and they're both on a tether. And I'm just walking by, and he's telling the story. I go, hang on a second. I go, why do we have a random owl and hawk on display? Because they're just hanging out under. I mean, there's a couple people looking at him, but it's not like, hey, come feed the hawk, come feed the owl. There's nothing going on here. They're just there. And he looks at me, this Canadian, he goes, do you see any seagulls? And I look up, and I go, as a matter of fact, I do. But there were two or three hovering around the edges of the parking lot, but they would not come over. And he goes, yeah, when we first started doing this a couple years ago, a guy called up and said, hey, I'm going to bring my hawk to keep the seagulls away. And now we call them every year. And I go, hold up, I need more information. Okay, they don't cover this on Net Geo Wild. Yeah. Talk to me. And he goes, well, do you see him down there? He's walking around looking at cars. He's got a hawk on his arm. He's the hawk guy, right? He's just that weirdo. He probably hunts with hawks, But he's got. Sorry, Matthew, do you have hawks? Okay, but you would love to have a hawk, would you not? I knew it. He makes his own swords. He'd love to have a hawk. The guy's walking around the car show with a hawk, but he's got on the other end where he's not. His other owl and his hawk are hanging out, and the seagulls know they're there. They're on tethers. They can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy about creation? And he said, we've never had, the seagulls won't dare come in because they know they're there. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, even in the big city, there's a little bit of creation always rules. I don't know where that story came from, but maybe turkeys and bears. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. Josh, would you ever come back on the podcast?
Sure.
This has been a marathon.
We got more stories to tell.
We got more. Awesome. This is Hunting Stories Part 2, and we'd ask you to share that bear story. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thanks for letting me, man.
Let me? Are you joking? Next time, just take me.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
If you don't have a Yukon River knife and you haven't gone to the website yet, there's a biblical precept here. It's called "Don't Be Dumb," and just don't be dumb. Mm-hmm. Check it out. If you need a knife, maybe you don't need a knife, but if you need a knife, you need a better knife. When you buy one of those knives, you're supporting Alaskan Inland Mission. If you eat at Chick-fil-A, you're supporting me because I have 2 children that work there. And you're feeding my peach shake habit. Have you had a peach shake at Chick-fil-A? Do you not like peaches? Are you Christian?
It sounds like that's where we're going for lunch today.
Bro,
so, let's go.
Get yourself a peach shake at Chick-fil-A. Okay. Life-changing.
Yeah.
Because it's real peaches.
All right.
And they only have them in summertime.
That's right.
Okay. Have you had a peach shake?
Of course.
Matthew Peach Shake? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was
So
not,
it's
I
a
saw him
little-
nodding in the background.
Yeah. I mean,
He's
all
aware.
the shakes there are great, but you don't go to Chick-fil-A and get cookies and cream shake when you haven't had a peach shake.
Right.
If you have a peach shake and it's not what Lev's billing, then go ahead and get a cookies and cream. But you might need to take one home for Laura.
Yeah, I probably should do that.
But you have to get a cooler because it'll be a puddle by the time you get
That's
back
true.
to wherever you're at. But did we leave anything out?
No, I think we're good.
Did we leave anything out? Do you have a Scholar Bible?
Mm.
You got a Scholar Bible.
Oh, man. Just wait. I get
What's
to
that
preach
one?
with this Bible
Have
on
you seen
the
it?
13th and
You was telling me
14th
about it.
of July.
Yes.
Coming up. Not
A
this week, but the
Scholar
next week.
Bible.
I'll walk out with my new Bible for the first time. Can't wait.
Calf skin.
Yeah.
What is the gilt edge on the side? Sorry, I nerd out about Bibles. Okay, creation and then Bibles. This isn't bad. It's a Bible.
It's called a yap.
Yes, the Yap. And you got the Tuscany brown.
Mm-hmm.
Britton will listen and he'll want to know.
Yeah.
And I didn't text him, I don't think. What is the color of the pages on the side? I don't know what they call it. The gilt edge.
Yeah.
Is it gold?
It's gold. It's like
gold.
almost a bronze.
Ooh.
So, yeah,
This is man's Bible.
it is.
I'm not going to lie. Dudes spend a lot of money on bows and on guns and on rims and on beer. I suggest you spend a lot of money on a Bible.
If this is the first Bible of this caliber that I've ever owned. And so I received this Bible graciously. When I went to put the Bible away, I didn't know what to do with it. Like other Bibles, I just set it on my nightstand, or I set it here or set it there. And I'm like, this is not that kind of a Bible. And so I carefully put it back in the box. And then I'm like,
box.
where do I put this Bible so that no one will touch this Bible? Because it needs to be preserved in its state that it's in as long as possible. And so it went on the shelf with my pistols.
As it should be. Praise God.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Somebody just asked me yesterday where to get a premium Bible. Listen, any Bible's great. I don't care if it's a paperback Bible falling apart. A Bible that you can understand, but the tab's all about God's Word. And so there's a part of me that's like, hey, if you're going to invest in something, we invest in a lot of things, but just a real heirloom, like legacy Bible for nerds like us, like a preaching Bible, that the right font that you can fit your notes in, and go to evangelicalbible.com, and you can nerd out there and find something that you could see. And I've actually heard for a gentleman like yourself, they're making the waterproof Bible. I don't know if that's out yet. I've heard there's an outdoorsman waterproof Bible. It's extra, or it's not super big. You do have to have pretty good eyes, because in order to make it, like the pages are waterproof, legit waterproof. Like
That's
you
sweet.
could sit there and read it in the rain. It's camo cover, but it's the font's a little small for a guy like me. And the last time I took my bifocals into the deer stand, it wasn't a good story. So when you run over them in the dark with your vehicle and then have to preach that weekend, it's not a good situation. But yeah. So Tab family, thank you so much for listening. Josh, thanks for coming on. I've got
Thanks,
a
Josh.
feeling we're going to have you back. Tab family, if you love the hunting stories, would you let us know? We got some ideas cooking, and we love God's creation, and we also want to know our audience. And we have seen that whenever we highlight the things that we love, men and women tend to share it with the people that they love, maybe people that are far from God. And so if you know someone that needs to hear this podcast and loves bear hunting or Alaska, or that's their dream to move to the UP or to some other place, share this with them. Maybe there'll be something in the podcast that will inspire, encourage, or draw someone that hasn't been in church or doesn't know the Lord, more importantly, to maybe seek the Lord while he may be found. So that's a great story. I'm glad you got to go. I'm not going to do the, must be nice, the Buckley, Northern Michigan man way of saying I love you.
Yeah.
It was nice, and it must be nice, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that it was. And I'm glad you're able to do that. So
It's great.
until next time, this is Adam, Josh, Matthew, and John signing off.